What if the reason you're like constantly exhausted isn't actually because you're working too hard, but because you're just surrounded by the wrong kind of friends?
Oh, that is such a compelling way to frame it.
Right. Because today on the deep dive, we are looking at this translated text by an author named Feng. It's called Chapter of Celestial Cultivation, Article 5, Seeking Kindred Spirits, Gradually Transcending the Mundane.
Quite a title.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. And, the term celestial cultivation might initially make you think of, I don't know, a dusty religious manuscript or some monk meditating in a cave for decades.
Right, some hermit on a mountain.
Exactly. But the reality is that this text actually offers a highly practical, surprisingly relatable blueprint for surviving today's hyper-competitive, just utterly distraction-filled world by finding your true tribe.
Yeah, and the central premise here is just deeply relevant to the modern condition. To help visualize the tension at the heart of this text, we've actually shifted the digital backdrop in the studio today into a split screen.
Oh yeah, it looks amazing.
Right. So on one side, we have this chaotic, fast-paced, modern cityscape. Blurred lights, endless traffic, those towering skyscrapers representing just the relentless pace of society.
That grind.
The grind, exactly. And then on the other side, there's this serene, misty mountain retreat, almost suspended in time. And Feng is essentially trying to figure out how a human mind transitions from the exhaustion of that city to the clarity of that mountain.
But without just, like, running away from your responsibility.
Right, it's not about escaping.
And that visual really highlights the exact tension we all feel, during a morning commute or after a grueling week of back-to-back meetings. So for you listening right now, this isn't just some abstract philosophical theory.
Yeah, not at all.
It's a deeply human exploration of loneliness. It's an investigation into how we navigate a world that demands absolutely everything from us. And, how we might find the genuine connections that actually sustain our energy instead of draining it. So what does this all mean?
Well, to understand the journey, we really first have to examine the starting point, which Feng describes as the trap of the mundane world.
The trap.
Yeah, because before we can even talk about seeking kindred spirits, we really have to grasp why the author is so desperate to find them in the first place.
Makes sense.
He paints this portrait of an exhausting reality that is going to sound, honestly, uncomfortably familiar to anyone trying to balance a career and a personal life today.
Oh, totally. The text outlines what feels like this 360-degree sphere of obligation. He describes the mundane world as a place where we are literally dragged down by our ties.
The structural trap.
Yeah, he maps it out. He says we have elderly parents above us requiring our care, and then children below us demanding nurturing.
Spouses in the middle expecting our attention.
Right. And then neighbors, siblings, friends on all sides requiring social support. You're just completely boxed in by logistical and emotional demands.
And what elevates his observation beyond just a simple complaint about being busy, like we all say we're busy, is that he layers societal competition over this structural trap.
Right.
He explicitly points out that we live in an era where competition is increasingly fierce. And the really insidious nature of this competition is that even when you give absolutely everything you have, you still find yourself falling behind.
It's just never enough.
Never. And he asks this highly pointed question. With a restless mind and a distracted heart navigating all these obligations, who actually has the bandwidth to live freely and gracefully?
Basically nobody. I mean, he's describing the ultimate rat race, just written in the context of pursuing what he calls the Tao.
Right.
And we should probably clarify that term for a second. When Feng talks about upholding or pursuing the Tao in this context, he's not just referencing a mystical religion.
No, it's much broader.
Yeah, he's describing a practical state of ultimate harmony, like a psychological flow state with the universe. And he's arguing that the reason people fail to achieve this celestial state of peace isn't due to a lack of spiritual discipline.
It's because they're just too tired.
Exactly. They are simply dragged down by the sheer logistics of existing in society.
What's fascinating here is the paradox Feng presents to solve this exhaustion. Because when we think of seeking enlightenment or cultivating immortality, the default image is isolation, right?
Yeah, the monk in the cave.
We picture the hermit retreating to the woods, cutting off all human contact to find inner peace. But Feng argues the exact opposite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he states that walking alone actually means you lack steadfast discipline, and that the reclusive struggle to uphold the Tao inevitably fails.
You can't do it by yourself.
No. Cultivating this elevated state of mind isn't about isolating yourself. It is entirely dependent on finding the right people to accompany you.
He makes the point that if you stay immersed in the secular world without a guide, you don't find peace. You just get completely lost in the noise.
Yes.
And he uses this brilliant phrase to describe the specific type of noise that ruins our focus.
Oh, I love this part. He describes daily life in the mortal world as being filled with trivialities and, quote, Eastern shorts and Western longs.
Eastern shorts and Western longs.
Right. It's a traditional Chinese idiom, and it specifically refers to gossip, petty arguments, and meaningless social distractions.
Basically Twitter or X or whatever.
Exactly. And the mechanism he's highlighting here is cognitive load. It's not just that our schedules are full, it's that our attention is just fragmented by things that fundamentally do not matter.
The gossip.
The Eastern shorts and Western longs consume the mental bandwidth we so desperately need to actually cultivate self-awareness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because self-awareness is really the crucial pivot point in his philosophy.
It is.
Shuifeng argues that self-awareness is invaluable, but it's incredibly rare because humans are naturally arrogant, right? We're deluded and self-opinionated.
Very true.
We are psychologically incapable of seeing our own flaws clearly. So his solution to gaining this self-awareness is that you need a mirror.
A mirror, yeah.
And that mirror is a kindred spirit. To put this in modern terms, a kindred spirit acts less like a cheerleader and more like a sparring partner.
I like that analogy.
Like a tough love workout buddy for your soul.
The goal isn't to knock you out, it's to expose where you're dropping your guard so you can fix your form.
Right.
But I do have to push back on his methodology here a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we are supposed to go out and surround ourselves with kindred spirits like people who are on our exact same wavelength, doesn't that just create a massive echo chamber? Like, how does someone who thinks exactly like us act as an objective mirror to cure our arrogance?
See, that is the pivotal question. And addressing it requires us to look really closely at what Shuifeng actually means by kindred spirit.
Because an echo chamber is simply a room full of yes men. Right? People who validate your ego just to maintain social harmony.
Yeah, nobody wants to rock the boat.
Exactly. But Shuifeng's definition of a mirror is something entirely different. And, frankly, it's far more demanding. A true kindred spirit, according to the text, is definitely not someone who just politely agrees with you.
The description he gives of a true spiritual companion completely caught me off guard. It totally shatters that image of stoic, silent monks meditating peacefully.
It really does, because he establishes this baseline of absolute equality. A true companion has to treat you as an equal. You have to be able to discuss complex scriptures and philosophy, and you have to be comfortable enough to share a bed without awkwardness or hierarchy.
Right.
But the ultimate test of this bond, the mechanism that actually prevents the echo chamber you mentioned, is that you must be able to argue fiercely.
The imagery he uses for this is just incredibly vivid. He writes that you might quarrel in the morning until your faces are literally red with anger.
Shouting at each other.
Yeah, you're shouting, the friction is palpable, and you swear you are never going to cross paths again.
But
then, before the sun even sets, that exact same person appears at your door. And they don't show up with a polite, formal apology.
No.
They show up with a bottle of ergotu.
Ergotu, yeah. It's a very strong, traditional Chinese liquor.
Right, so they show up with booze, grinning mischievously and vowing never to part.
I call that the ergo-2 test. It's this beautiful illustration of what modern behavioral scientists might call psychological safety or radical candor.
Oh, radical candor, yeah.
The bond has to be stronger than the ego. You can clash, you can ruthlessly expose each other's flaws, which is, again, precisely what a mirror is designed to do.
Yeah.
But the underlying equality and mutual respect bring you back together to just drink and laugh under the stars. The friction isn't a failure of the relationship. The friction is the mechanism for growth.
That dynamic, it really reminds me of brilliant creative partnerships. Like, think about legendary songwriting duos or long-term creative collaborators. They notoriously fought tooth and nail over every chord, every lyric, every single design choice. It was never polite.
No, it's always chaotic.
But that abrasive friction was the whole point. It was how they stripped away the mediocre ideas and found the genius. Because without that level of pushback, you just get arrogant about your rough drafts.
You do.
You need someone who loves you enough to tell you when your work is terrible. And Shuifeng places such a high value on this. Doesn't he say something like, one grain of sand contains an entire universe?
Yes, and one true kindred spirit opens the gateway to a celestial paradise.
Wow.
And he's explicit about the tragedy of living without this kind of companion. He states that without a true kindred spirit, a person inevitably falls into one of two extremes.
Which are?
Well, either you become arrogant and self-absorbed, believing your own height because you have no mirror to correct your delusions, or you become self-deprecating and despondent because you possess this immense depth but have absolutely no one capable of understanding it. He likens it to a flower blooming in a deserted valley with no one to admire it. It just blooms and withers in vain.
Yeah, blooming and withering in vain. That is a haunting concept.
It is.
But here's the thing. Shuo Feng actually admits in the text that he is struggling to find this dynamic in his own life, right?
Yeah, he does.
Like, he lists 8 specific people in his inner circle.
Hmm.
He mentions Foshan, Taiji, Wuji, Penglai, Wanyan, Biyun, Tianshan, and Qinghai Celestial.
Quite a roster.
Right, and he frames them as these integral parts of his existence. But then he drops this massive philosophical bombshell.
Mm-hmm.
He realizes out loud that he cannot be his true unfiltered self with a single one of them.
Yeah.
He literally asks if any of them can actually argue, laugh, and get drunk under the stars with him as an equal. So my question is, why is he entirely unable to find this equal footing with the very people he has built his life around?
It is a remarkable moment of vulnerability for a spiritual leader to admit. He breaks down his own perceived flaws first. He points to his humble origins and his lack of worldly sophistication as, potential barriers.
Okay.
But the deeper analysis comes when he dissects the hierarchy of loneliness he experiences while trying to build his community. To give some context for the listeners, Shu Feng is attempting to build a spiritual domain called Lifechanyuan, and his followers, or the members, are referred to as Chanyuan Celestials.
Right, and he breaks this loneliness down into a structural hierarchy, which honestly completely mirrors modern networking dynamics.
It really does.
Like the people above you ignore you, and the people below you aren't helpful for your own growth.
Precisely. He categorizes his interactions into 3 distinct groups. First, those who are, quote, above him in wisdom, status, or spiritual development. They simply do not wish to associate with him.
They're out of his league.
Right. Second, those who are on par with him, his true peers, they're too fiercely ambitious. Yeah, they want to establish their own domains, their own spiritual empires, rather than aligning with his vision for Lifechanyuan.
So they're competitors.
Exactly. And third, those below him in development are nowhere to be found, aside from the few individuals he calls his Chanyuan Celestials. But they act more as followers than as mirrors.
So the people who could actually be his equal sparring partners are too busy trying to be the CEO of their own spiritual startup.
Yes. And this raises an important question regarding our own behavior today. How often do our modern ambitions, our egos, and our desperate desire to build our own little domains prevent us from finding our own Urgutu-carrying kindred spirits?
That is a great question.
We are so hyper-focused on networking for personal advantage that we completely miss out on connecting for reflection. We optimize our social circles to acquire followers and useful contacts, but we actively avoid equals who might actually challenge our authority.
Because a follower is never going to argue with you until they're red in the face.
No.
They're just going to nod, validate your opinions, and leave you stuck in the exact echo chamber we talked about earlier, completely devoid of self-awareness.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've established the structural trap of this exhausting, obligation-heavy world. And we understand that the ultimate cure is finding that fiery, equal, kindred spirit.
Right.
But from a purely practical standpoint, how does someone actually execute this? Especially when you still have a mortgage to pay, aging parents to support, and children to raise. Like, you can't just drop everything.
And Shu Feng doesn't ask you to. He's actually highly pragmatic about the implementation. He does not advocate for recklessly abandoning your life overnight.
Good.
Instead, he introduces the systemic path of gradual detachment. First and foremost, he insists that you must fulfill your strict obligations to your parents and your children.
You have to take care of your family.
Right. You cannot simply walk away from the people you brought into the world or the people who brought you into it. That is the baseline of human responsibility.
Which I love, because establishing that baseline grounds the entire philosophy. It completely prevents the text from just being an excuse for selfishness or fleeking out on your life.
Exactly. But once those primary inescapable duties are fulfilled, the instruction shifts. Then you begin gradually detaching from all other secular ties.
Okay.
And his methodology here is really specific. You accept these peripheral ties if they already exist. You embrace their absence if they naturally fade away. But you must never, under any circumstances, make new worldly bonds.
You have to stop entangling yourself in the web.
Yes.
The mechanism there is fascinating to me. It's like looking at your brain as a computer. right?
Right, I see where you're going.
Like every new casual bond, every random networking contact, every gossipy friendship, it acts like an open tab on your web browser.
Oh, that's good.
Even if you aren't actively looking at that tab, it is draining your mental RAM in the background. Shuem is basically saying you have to stop opening new tabs if you ever want the processing power required for deep self-awareness.
That is an excellent way to frame it. The background RAM drain. As you stop opening new tabs and you allow the old, unimportant ones to close naturally, you distance yourself from those worldly attachments.
Yeah.
This cognitive clearing process, he argues, is what gradually allows you to approach the celestial realm. And for Zifeng, this culminates in a very specific utopian vision for his community, Lifechanyuan.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because his vision of a spiritual utopia isn't sitting motionless on a cloud playing a harp.
No.
He maps out a daily schedule that is deeply grounded in the physical world.
It's very tactile.
Very. Like at dawn, they are climbing mountains, chopping wood, fetching water, and planting melons.
Hard labor.
Right. Then at noon, the labor stops, and they sit in the shade to discuss complex scriptures and sip tea to the sound of a traditional Chinese zither, the guqian.
Sounds lovely.
It does. And then in the afternoon, and this is forests and streams like children.
Pure play.
Yeah. Finally, at night, they meditate to shed their mortal attachments.
It is a meticulously structured progression. You move from grueling physical labor to elevated intellectual discourse, to pure, uninhibited play, and finally to deep spiritual reflection.
Honestly, it sounds like an adult summer camp crossed with a rigorous monastic retreat.
It really does.
But I have to point out what looks like a massive contradiction here.
Okay, what is it?
Well, he spent this entire text outlining the absolute necessity of gradually severing worldly attachments and detaching from the secular world.
Yes.
But his ultimate dream, the grand utopia he's literally trying to build, is essentially to hang out in the woods, drink tea, and play tag with his best friends. Isn't that just replacing one set of earthly attachments with a different set of earthly attachments?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of Xu Feng's philosophy, that apparent contradiction resolves itself.
Okay, how so?
Because he is drawing a critical functional distinction between draining mundane obligations and elevating spiritual bonds.
So the argument is that not all attachments pull you in the same direction.
Exactly the opposite directions, in fact. The ties of the mundane world, the relentless social climbing, the performative networking, the Eastern shorts and Western longs we talked about, they are inherently transactional and ego-driven.
They just take from you.
They scatter your energy and fracture your attention. But the bonds formed with true kindred spirits, the people who act as your objective mirror, they are transformational.
Because they're equals.
Yes. They do not tie you to the dirt. They act as a secure foundation that actually allows your mind to expand and explore without the fear of losing your identity.
It's the difference between an anchor that drags your ship to the bottom of the ocean and like a stable launch pad that lets a rocket actually achieve orbit.
That captures the physics of it perfectly. And Shui Feng readily acknowledges how agonizingly difficult this transition is.
It doesn't sound easy.
No. He concludes the text by stating that cultivating the Tao is harder than ascending the heavens from the treacherous paths of Shu.
The paths of Shu.
Yeah, it's a classical Chinese reference to these notoriously steep, perilous mountain roads where literally one misstep means disaster.
Yeah, man.
He uses this metaphor to emphasize that the hardest part of enlightenment isn't mastering complex meditation techniques or memorizing ancient texts. The truly treacherous part is the psychological tightrope walk of letting go of the exhausting, trivial parts of society without tipping over into total isolation, bitterness, or apathy.
You have to navigate the sheer drop on both sides.
Exactly.
You have to find the needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
The person who makes the rigorous process of detachment actually worth the effort.
Yes.
So bringing this entire philosophical framework back to you listening right now, whether you are actively seeking celestial immortality or, you're simply trying to survive a brutal corporate work week without losing your sense of self, there's a profound, actionable takeaway here.
There really is.
Sui Feng is reminding us that the deepest wealth in this life isn't your salary, and it's definitely not your follower count. The ultimate wealth is finding that rare, volatile person who will genuinely challenge you.
The mirror.
The person who will mirror your flaws without judgment, who absolutely will not let you get away with your own nonsense,
Hmm.
and who will still show up at your door with a metaphorical bottle of liquor ready to laugh under the stars.
It is arguably the most vital pursuit we can undertake as human beings. But, I think Suifeng leaves us with something even deeper to consider regarding our own resistance to this process.
What's that?
Well, he tells us that kindred spirits are the mirror we desperately need for self-awareness. But perhaps the real reason they are so incredibly rare, why we search the heavens above and the underworld below and still cannot seem to find them, isn't because they do not exist.
Then why?
It's because we are secretly terrified of what we might see when a true, distortion-free mirror finally stands in front of us.
Man, that is a heavy but entirely necessary truth to sit with. Are we actually prepared to look in the mirror, or do we prefer the comfort of our delusions?
It's a tough question.
It is. Look at your text history today. Look at your calendar. Are you spending your time texting mirrors who challenge you, or are you just surrounding yourself with yes men who keep you comfortable? As you head back into your crowded rooms and your busy streets, keep an eye out for those mirrors. And maybe don't be so afraid of the friction. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.